I'm Paulette Hoover. I live in Tipton, Indiana, and I have written some children's books, and I'm going to read one to you today called Dixie the Playground Duck. This is a true story, so I hope you enjoy it. Dixie was a fat brown duck that loved thrills and excitement. Her home was a pond near the big school. Hundreds of busy children came to the school every day. Sometimes the children would visit Dixie's pond. They were always excited when they could watch Dixie swim around and dive for some fish to eat for her supper. One day, Dixie decided to go to the school to visit the children. Dixie and her friend Darlton waddled all around the school, peeking inside the window. They saw children singing, reading, dancing, and painting. They even saw one class of students pointing their fingers right at them. "Look, there are 2 ducks waddling right by our window," the students shouted to the teacher. Then all the children flocked to the window to see the 2 waddling ducks. Now, Dixie and Darlton enjoyed watching the kids very much. One day, they spent the entire afternoon on the playground watching children play on the swings, scoot down the slide, climb the tall ladders, and run around chasing each other. The children shouted and screamed with joy. "I think this playground would make a nice home for my nest," said Dixie. "This will be perfect. I love to watch all the children run around and play games with each other." Dixie's favorite spot on the playground was the big red slide because it was right in the middle of all the excitement. She loved to watch the children climb up the slide, up the ladder, and then speed down like lightning down the big red slide. Dixie decided that this would make a perfect home for her and her family. Dixie started to get her home ready. On the playground, she used the mulch that covered the playground to make her nest. Her nest was made right under the children's favorite big red slide. Dixie pulled the mulch with her beak. She nudged it to the left and wiggled it to the right, and soon she had built a perfect little nest where her fat little body could rest. The next day at recess, the children saw the nest. A little girl noticed it at first and yelled, "Look, there's a duck under the big red slide." All the children became very curious about Dixie. They wondered why she had built her nest on such a noisy area filled with a commotion of busy school children. The children began to visit her every day during their recess. Some kids thought it was a lot more fun to visit Dixie than to run and play with their friends. One day, a boy noticed something. "Hey, look, I think she's got some eggs under her." Sure enough, Dixie had 12 eggs in her nest. The big red slide was her shelter. The slide protected her from the wind, the rain, the hail, and even from the hot, scorching sun. But now Dixie also needed protection from all the busy school children. To help protect Dixie, one of the janitors strung a big yellow ribbon around the slide so the children could not get too close. To help the children understand what was happening, the principal made an announcement. She told all the children that the mother duck had chosen to make a nest on their playground. The principal encouraged the children to learn from Dixie, but not to disturb her. Days turned into weeks. Every day as the children played at recess, Dixie had company. The kids talked to her, pointed at her, fed her, and watched her with a very close eye. Knowing that Dixie would not get off her nest, the children fed her breadcrumbs and pretzels. The children soon discovered that Dixie's favorite food was corn. They enjoyed tossing small little yellow kernels of corn to Dixie, and if the corn didn't land close enough, Dixie would stretch out her neck and grab it as fast as a frog's tongue snatches a lazy fly. The children watched as Dixie stood at her nest and rolled each egg over with her beak. She wanted to warm all sides of each egg so the baby ducklings inside would grow just right. Dixie sat on the nest day after day, watching all the playground activities. One day, one of the children spotted Dixie standing up to stretch. "Oh, I see them. The 12 white eggs are still there. Look, shouted the children. And sure enough, all 12 eggs were under Dixie, safe and sound. Dixie and her eggs were all protected under that big red slide. Every day the children were delighted to see Dixie, and Dixie also was delighted to see them. Oh, but Dixie was so careful. As the children surrounded the big red slide, she didn't want anything to happen to her eggs. And the children were also careful because they didn't want anything to happen to Dixie. On Saturday and Sunday, when the children did not have school, Dixie was sad. She loved the hustle and bustle of the playground. She yearned to see the children's little faces and their giggly grins. She missed the happy screaming. She missed the creaking of the swings. She missed the running of the frisky feet. And she even missed the blowing of the teacher's whistle. The playground was deserted. Then one Friday morning, very early, Dixie felt little rumbles underneath her. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The eggs were beginning to hatch. Peck, peck, peck. The ducklings wanted out. Oh, how they wiggled and oh, how they tapped. They squirmed and they cracked, and pretty soon, all 12 ducklings were out of their shells. The ducklings were soft and yellow with some feathers of brown. One duckling even had a little black spot. Concerned about their safety, Dixie looked around. It was too early for children to be on the playground. However, looking out across the playground, Dixie spotted some big yellow school buses. She knew that the children would soon arrive at school. Dixie stretched and gathered her babies, and she led them all down to her other home, the nearby pond. She found a perfect hiding place way over on the back side of the pond. Dixie hoped to protect her small babies there. When the children ran to her nest that day at recess, all they saw were clumps of broken eggshell. Dixie was gone, and there were no more eggs in the nest that they had watched for 37 days. The next day, one of the students and his mother walked out to the pond. "Mom, there's Dixie the playground duck," the boy shouted happily. Along the edge of the water, Dixie was nestled in the grass with her newborn ducklings. She was trying to protect them from the wind and the rain. "Please stand up, Dixie. Dixie, I want to see your babies," said the little boy. Dixie, the proud playground duck, stood up, gave a little wiggle, and showed off all 12 of her young babies. Then she sat back down, covering them up so that she could protect all the new little bundle of ducklings. Now Dixie, Darlton, and the 12 little ducklings live at the pond. They could still hear the playground, and they happily watch as the children go down the big red slide that was once their home. Remembering her home under the big red slide, Dixie said, "Maybe someday when my babies are big enough, I'll take them over to the playground and they can go down the big red slide." Just like the children did at recess. I'm sure my ducklings would have fun doing that. That is, someday when they're big enough for school. That is the end of my story, but I think it's kind of interesting to show you, as I said at the beginning, this is a true story, and here are some of the photographs of that when Dixie would come visit our school, and I put some pictures in of Dixie walking down the sidewalk and under the slide, and there's that yellow ribbon, and the kids would feed her under that slide, and they loved to watch her. This was actually a couple years later. She put her nest under a different slide. You can see the slide is a little different in those pictures, and I love this picture with her little duckling. That is the end of my story. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a wonderful day, and kids, get out your own books and start reading. Thank you.